Okay.
I guess we're live.
All right.
So, hello YouTube. This is Gavaguy, and what do you want to be referred to as? Informative atheist?
That's fine. That's
All
fine right
right.
there. Informative atheist is cool, man.
All right. So, I've watched a few videos today and seen some questions online, and once again, this is just probably going to be a shorter video. I've got some questions written down that I wanted to try and put some answers out there. Robin Dupree Reed put out a video, and it was kind of a flashback to one of Matthew 4:19's videos from maybe a year ago or more, where he was asking the question, why should I be an atheist? And she said that, well, they had a hangout responding to that question with Matthew 4:19, and in the hangout, it came out that Matthew 4:19 said that he was an atheist before he was a Christian, that he'd only been a Christian for 4 or 5 years at that time, and before that time he was an atheist and was into partying and living wild and things. And so Robin's video today that she posted today or yesterday, sometime fairly recently, she said, well, as atheists, fellow atheists, do you believe that this is sincere when Christians say this? And there are several who have, in telling their story, have said, well, yeah, I used to be an atheist. There was a guy, Sean, someone or other. I'm not so familiar with him, but I saw one of his hangouts the other day where he was saying that he was an atheist, and I guess that's what's her name, Shannon.
Oh, that
Do you know?
Shaney is me or something like that.
Yeah,
Or is it
yeah. I
somebody?
think that's who
Okay.
she was talking
I've
about,
heard a little
and
bit
she,
about her.
right, she's claimed that she's been an atheist before she was a Christian as well, and things. So, but anyhow, Robin is asking, well, do you think this is real, or were they just saying that they're atheists as like a kind of a I guess a recruitment technique, saying, "Oh, I was where you are, and now I have the right answer, and if you'll
Mm.
just listen to me, I'll explain to you how you and I were both wrong, or whatever." So
Hmm.
my take on it is that there are a lot of people who maybe grow up in homes where they're nominally belong to one denomination or another. I grew up in the North, and there were a lot of Catholic families that attended maybe 2 or 3 times a year at the big Christmas and Easter and those kinds of things. But other than that, really didn't participate, and the religion wasn't a very central part of their lives. And the kids in those families, I had one fairly close friend in high school who was an atheist, um, whose parents were Catholic and things. And
Yeah.
now this particular friend of mine did quite a bit of thinking about it, and but I think there are other people who just kind of maybe being surrounded by friends who are skeptical, or just don't believe, or maybe persuaded by pretty superficial arguments against religion, and maybe they're persuaded and think, oh yeah, the Bible's bogus or whatever.
Yeah.
But because religion is not super central to their identity and their families, identities and things like that, I think that they can tend to maybe abandon whatever faith means to them more easily. So, but there are most of us who are here on YouTube and participate in discussions like this and things, became atheists after much contemplation. I know in my case, I was a believer and fought hard to hold on to my faith. And after trying to objectively look at both sides of the issue, and I'm not saying that I'm ultimately 100% right, but this is the conclusion that I came to after a long, arduous process of internal debate and introspection and things like that. And I did try to seek out some of the best arguments from both sides, and this is where I landed.
Yes,
So,
a long conclusion.
well,
Oh,
sure.
okay.
And Matthew, you would not be persuaded very easily, just at the drop of a hat by some kids or something throwing out, something about, well, why believe in the Bible if you don't believe in the Roman gods or something like that? I mean, I know of people who
Where's
were
the flaw in
persuaded.
the argument from contingency then?
Sure, but
Where's the flaw in that argument?
I'm sorry?
Where's the flaw in the argument from contingent beings?
I don't know what you're talking about, Matthew.
Exactly. So you just said 5 minutes ago, I sought out the best arguments, and I've just given you one of the best arguments, and you don't know what the argument is.
No, I know what you're talking about. Now I know what you're talking about, but
where's the flaw in that argument?
I'm not interested. This is not relative or related to the discussion at hand.
You claim to have done lots of intense research and study and rigorously studied the subjects of theism and atheism before you came to your conclusion. I'm testing that claim by presenting you with some of the best
Leibnizian argument. It's Leibniz, right?
The argument from contingent beings, yeah.
Right. Yes, I'm familiar with that argument, and I think
Where's the flaw in it then?
I think that it fails in that it basically tries to define God into existence.
Where does it do that? Because David Hume, who was one of the greatest atheist philosophers, accepted the argument from contingency.
Well, if David Hume did it, then I'll do it then. But this is not the point of the question at hand.
The question at hand is whether or not you are being truthful when you say that you rigorously research the subjects of atheism and theism. I'm testing that claim by asking you questions about things that anyone who had done that kind of rigorous study would know.
Okay, and I identified the argument. I'm familiar with it, and I disagree with it. So your claim that I don't know it or that I didn't do my thorough investigation is wrong.
So
I think you did.
Where does it try to define God into existence?
Matthew?
It's there in the definition.
Yeah,
where does it do that?
This is not the point of this discussion. We can have this discussion in a few minutes if you'll let me continue here.
Cool. Yeah, you continue to lie to your audience then on a live hangout about how studiously and rigorously you researched these subjects when it's blatantly obvious from the most basic question presented to you about the one argument that you did not do that rigorous research, or else you'd be able to answer these questions. So go ahead and waffle your nonsense.
I did answer the question, and I answered it to the point that
I asked you the question. Where does the Leibnizian cosmological argument seek to define God into existence? Hume never thought that.
Okay, that's fine. I disagree with David Hume.
You just said 5 minutes ago, well, if he accepted it, I accepted.
Right. That was being facetious.
Good. So where does it seek to define God into existence? Where does it do it? Do you know or don't
Matthew,
you know?
I'm going to boot you if you can't settle down here, because this is not relevant to the question at hand.
Continue with your lies then. Go ahead.
Why would you assume that he's lying? I mean, he just gave you a very good explanation of where he is now. I mean...
He lied. He said he's done a rigorous study of the subject. I'm demonstrating, and I can demonstrate, if not booty from the hangout, just by asking him questions about arguments for atheism and against theism and for theism. This guy has not rigorously studied the subjects.
Well, Well, here's the thing. I don't think he. Maybe he doesn't know every single aspect of it. But I mean,
He doesn't have the foggiest idea about the best arguments for Christianity or for theism or for atheism. He just thinks he does.
Okay.
He's wrong in that assessment.
Matthew, my point that I was trying to make is that there are some people who might self-identify as atheists who would have done far less by the way of studying arguments and listening to debates and reading apologetics.
So what? They're still atheists.
I have.
As long as they lack a belief in God, they're an atheist.
Okay, so we're in agreement.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter whether you've done no research, some research, or a whole heap of research. If you don't believe in a God or gods, you're an atheist.
Okay. Did you pay attention at all before you came into this
No,
hangout?
I didn't. No, I just came in and heard you lying, and I thought, oh, I better call him on that.
All right, I appreciate your concern for.
Yeah, I'm always concerned for the truth, and people should be concerned for the truth.
Wow.
Thank you.
Because this kind of atheist bullshit claims about, oh, I know the arguments for theism, and I've studied them rigorously, and I rejected them, and I came to an informed conclusion.
Well, here's the thing. He did it to the best of his ability, though. How are you going to fault him for that?
Very, very seldom does that claim hold up to even the minimalist examination of that claim. And you're an example of where someone makes that claim, and with just minimal questioning, it's exposed for everyone watching on a live hangout. You did not do that.
Well, I'm confused, Matt. If I could ask you a question, what would be the best, I guess, argument for Christianity if you don't think that that's what he did?
One of the best arguments for theism is the Leibnizian cosmological argument. He makes a claim. It tries to define God into existence, something it does not do at all. It doesn't even mention God. That's how little he knows about the argument.
I didn't say. Well, you're right. You're right.
Of course
I'm
right,
familiar.
I know the argument.
Matthew.
Listen. It tries to define God into existence, even though it doesn't mention the word God. Wow.
Matthew.
That's cool. That's good reasoning there. Did you study logic as well?
I've conceded that that's not really what it does. That was shorthand. I think it does something similar to that.
Like what?
And we can get to it at the end of this, but I actually have a structure that I'm trying to pursue here. Yeah. The question at hand...
That's not the title of your hangout. The title of your hangout is general discussion about atheism and theism.
You're right, and the reason for that was because I had been in discussions with some other theists, and I didn't know who was going to show up. And
obviously not a lot.
You're right. So yeah, one of the people that I had invited wasn't able to show, and I had some backup plans, and I've started this hangout with somewhat of an outline here. So if the question at hand was based on Robin Dupree Reed's video, asking whether or not I believed that Christians who claimed they were atheists before they became saved are being sincere or telling the truth. And my argument was that yes, I think that many of them were. I think that most of the time they were most likely not atheists who had tried to pursue the kinds of arguments and apologetics and things to the level or degree that most of the people who are here on YouTube have.
But that's a lie. That's a blatant lie. Most of the people here on YouTube calling themselves atheists are like you. They don't have the first clue about, in any level of depth, about arguments for theism or against theism or for atheism. They haven't done the bloody research. They don't know the arguments.
Okay.
They think they do, and I'll tell you why they think they do.
Okay, here.
They've watched a couple of YouTube videos or watched an idiot like Matt Dillahunty or some dipstick like that and think, great, I know the arguments. Wow, that's the level of knowledge you get here on Google+.
See, I have to disagree. Those are like two extremes, though. Many people can come, to those conclusions in many different ways. I don't think that's.
And
aren't you
let me ask you this, Matthew.
Atheist?
Let me ask you this.
What?
Aren't you claiming to be the informed atheist?
Something like that.
Yeah. So, are you informed about atheism?
More or less, yeah.
So, what's an atheological argument then? Give me an example of an atheological argument.
Like for atheism, for the side of atheism, I guess.
An atheological argument, please.
I mean.
Look at the dumb look on his face. This is the informed atheist, by the way, who doesn't even know what the word atheological means. That's how uninformed the informed atheist is about atheism. It's funny, it's humorous, it's laughable, you're a joke.
Can you give an example of an atheological argument?
Yes, the argument from non-belief, the argument from evil, the argument from incompatible properties, the argument against miracles, the argument against the Bible. There's hundreds of them.
Okay, so perhaps he would have given you a number of those, but maybe didn't know their official names. I'm sure
that's the problem.
And I know I have heard them.
Anyone informed about the atheism-theism debate would know immediately what was meant by the term atheological argument. They would know it instantly. That is true. That is true.
It is not.
Because every philosophically informed atheist, and those are the only atheists who are in a position to even talk seriously about being an informed atheist, they talk on this topic all the time. They present atheological arguments. They do it in philosophical terms. They present actual arguments. They don't come out with this nonsense we hear on the internet. Oh, I lack belief in God because there's no evidence for God. Philosophically informed atheists don't even consider that to be atheism. They consider that to be some form of agnosticism.
Okay. Let me ask you this, Matthew. Is it possible that someone could study and read the Bible and be very informed about the theology from a biblical perspective without having knowledge of the technical or academic identifications of various components of theology?
No.
No?
No.
Not the all-knowing atheist, I'm just saying. I mean...
So in order to... You have to have all of the academic nomenclature and categorization in order to be informed.
No. That's where a serious study of the Bible will take you, automatically take you there. You don't go and say, what do I need to get to know about to become informed about the Bible? If you're seriously going to study the Bible, it will take you into wanting to learn about the original languages. It will want you to learn about theology, about systematic theologies, about the phraseology and the terminology used and what they mean, about what it means when someone talks about the aseity of God and you're scratching your head and saying, what the fuck do they mean by that? If you're driven to understand that subject, then you will find out, and you do that by studying academics, scholars, theologians, and that's something you will be driven to, and not just for theism but for atheism. You'll know exactly what the difference is between the logical and the evidential problems of evil. You'll know exactly what's meant by the argument from non-belief. You'll know all that kind of stuff, because if you want to understand atheism, you'll be driven to study it to its deepest levels. And only then can you say, hey, you know what? I know what I'm talking about here.
Do you know theology at its deepest levels?
Yes.
So are you able to read Hebrew, ancient Hebrew?
No.
Have you studied the ancient codexes and texts?
No.
Okay. So there's a deeper level than what you have.
But that's not theology.
Oh, that's not theology.
That's not, no, it's not. That's text. That's to do with that's textual criticism.
Oh.
That's a different field of study from theology. For example, Bart Ehrman, who is an agnostic, is a textual critic, but he's not a theologian. That's why he has no business writing books about theology. It's not his field of expertise. William Lane Craig is a theologian, but he's not a textual critic. So he's no business talking about textual criticism. So it's knowing where your area of expertise is, what you're talking about, what you need to know to be an informed individual on that subject, and doing the bloody hard work to get to know it. And most atheists, most specifically, I would say 90% of atheists on Google Plus haven't even begun to scratch the surface of knowledge about theism or atheism or Christianity. And on the Bible, they display the most gross ignorance about the Bible. I've yet to meet an atheist who's competent on the Bible, except for one individual on an email discussion group called Farrell Till, who's unfortunately dead now. But on Google Plus, apart from probably Ozymandias, I've never met an informed atheist on the Bible. They're all ignoramuses, basically. At kindergarten level, Sunday school level knowledge of the Bible. G-man level, that's how desperate they are. They're at G-man level knowledge of the Bible.
All right.
That's
so
why,
you have.
That's why you don't present any challenge to informed theism or informed Christianity.
You completely derailed my discussion here.
Wow.
I'll mute myself and you can go back to.
So at any rate, back to the question at hand, which was whether or not Christians who claim that they were atheists at one point or another in their lives before they came to know Christ in their terms, whether or not they can be sincere in that claim. Again, my position is yes, and I suspect that in many cases they did not endeavor to pursue either Christianity or atheism to any level or degree, but probably had very rudimentary commitment in either case before they changed their position. Informative atheists.
The same is true of atheists. The same is true of atheists who claim themselves to be ex-Christian. They had only the most basic kindergarten level knowledge of Christianity before they converted to atheism, which is just as equally ignorant, and vice versa, going from atheism into Christianity. It works the same way. It's just people who have never bothered their backside to do the study. That's the people who look at Galaxy Dreams. A lot of talk about this idiot called Galaxy Dreams on the internet.
Hey, let's not.
Recently deconverted to atheism. She never deconverted to atheism from.
What is she then?
From an informed view of Christianity. She deconverted from ignorance of Christianity to equal ignorance of atheism, being spoon-fed by people like Ozymandias and taken along the road of being spoon-fed into that. And she now considers herself an informed atheist. It's laughable. You guys need to get your act together. Okay. Give us a challenge. Give us something to think, hey, you know what? I better be careful on that hangout, because you know what? These guys know what they're talking about. You don't.
I mean, how can you just make that justification if she legitimately or thought she believed in a deity, and then she's like, well, I'm not seeing the evidence for it anymore now.
Because I asked her the questions. I asked her the questions. Hey, why did you deconvert? She gave me her pathetic answers, and they were very bad reasons, okay? very bad reasons.
What were the reasons, if you...
Oh, she didn't like the God of the Bible, the God of the Old Testament. She couldn't reconcile. Ridiculous. I mean, anyone who's done any serious study into the Bible that would never be their reason for deconverting. And not only that, let's say I'm a Christian, and let's say I was an uninformed Christian. So I was just going to church and doing the goody stuff and pretending and not really studying the Bible. And then what I did then is I began studying the Bible a bit more seriously. And I came across this from their terminology, this horrible God of the Bible who murdered babies and condoned rape and all that. And I was disgusted by it, and I said, oh my God, oh my God. Oh, I can't say that anymore because I don't believe in you, you fuckwit. This is what you do. I know why, nothing to do with you. I don't believe you exist.
I mean,
that doesn't get you. That doesn't get you to atheism.
No.
That only gets you. It doesn't. That only gets you from rejecting one proposed God, the God of Christianity. What about the God of deism? What if God still exists, but he's not the God of Christianity? So why would you jump from Christianity to atheism without considering other gods, other descriptions? You wouldn't, unless you were an idiot, and Galaxy Dreams is an idiot.
No.
Yeah.
I think here's my thing. Are you trying to say before you become an atheist at all that you should just look at every single aspect or every single detail of everything? Because
okay, let's look at what scientists do. Okay, let's say that scientists propose a theory. Let's say it's a theory of evolution. Okay, and let's say in 100 years' time, very damning evidence is brought forward about the theory of evolution. And they say, hey, oh my goodness, this is disastrous. That theory we thought described how life evolved after it had appeared, we got it bloody well wrong.
Yeah.
They wouldn't just jump from there to young earth creationism. They would turn around and say, well, okay, so we got that wrong, so let's look at the other alternatives. Before they jump anywhere else, they'll look at other models. They'll look at other possibilities. They'll take time to consider all the available alternatives that is possible to know about, and then they'll choose the best one, the one that best fits the reality.
So have you exhausted all of the possible religions and renditions of God?
I don't need to because I found the
But wouldn't you need to do that? I mean, Matthew, it sounds to me like you are only concerned about people as long as they've met your criteria, then they're satisfactorily responsible for their beliefs. And if they haven't, then you disregard them and say that they're fools and ignoramuses.
Okay, so tell me this then. What did you disagree with about that science analogy?
I disagreed with the fact that you have a level that you're satisfied with in your life. And not everybody has the time. Not everybody is retired.
Exactly, and that's an admission. That's an admission from yourself that you have not put in sufficient time, sufficient effort to come to an informed view about these subjects. And if you want to test that, we'll go into the arguments for theism, and I'll expose on your hangout, your live open air hangout, how little you know about those arguments and how little you know about atheism and the arguments for atheism and why those arguments fall down, and the Bible and Christianity. You're not a serious contender when it comes to atheists or atheism. You're just a kindergarten level atheist. That's all you are.
Okay. And are you
pretending
what level
to be
are
something
you?
greater?
What level are you?
I'm at high school.
High school. What level?
High school.
High
Would you
school.
say your PhD?
I'm just about finished. No, PhD is university level.
Right.
So you got high school, you got
high
college,
school. Okay.
you got university.
Yeah.
So you're in kindergarten, and I'm in high school.
Okay.
That's where we are in this.
Well, thank you. And listen, I've added the Leibnizian argument, cosmological argument, for the existence of a God to the bottom of this list. If you can hang on, we will get to it. But this is not the discussion at hand at the moment. Okay?
We've gotten off topic again.
Right.
No, the discussion is whether or not people who convert can be sincere and genuine. Of course they can be, but being sincere does not equal to being informed. And
That's fine.
Any Christian who converts to atheism is not an informed Christian. They've been an uninformed Christian, and that's the reason why they've been taken in by the irrationality of atheism.
And I would say that any atheist who converts to Christianity was uninformed as an atheist.
But the problem is, you're in kindergarten and I'm in high school.
Okay.
So
Well,
you don't have any.
what?
So you don't have any. Okay, so if you say I'm not in high school and you're in the same level as me, let's go into the argument.
Yes, we'll get to that later. But the point is right now, we agree on this first issue. I want to go into one more example of to demonstrate.
Waste more time. Okay,
that's fine. Thank you. This is when you can make your own hangout and do what you want.
Well, I came onto this hangout because it was supposed to be general discussion about atheism and theism. What we find is it's not
You're
about
right.
that at all.
And I changed my mind before I went live.
Well, then
and
you
I was
should have
intending to change the title after when I
should
posted
have done
the video.
that. Well, you should have done that and informed people before they joined the hangout.
Sorry, well, you were uninformed before you joined the hangout. Or misinformed, perhaps. I'm sorry. I apologize for that.
My goodness.
So, at any rate, there are people whose families may side with one political view or another, and but their parents or their families may not be super politically oriented. And I know. When I was growing up, my family leaned very strongly toward Republicans, but we didn't have political discussions or debates. I really wasn't exposed to very much from the other side of the political spectrum, and I know that I was able to give very quick, shooting from the hip responses when people said, well, why do you believe that abortion is wrong, when I was, growing up? And I would give, kind of off-the-cuff responses to that I had been inculcated with growing up. But as I matured and grew up, went through college and things, and came to a place where I wanted to assess those beliefs. I did my best, and as I've indicated before with my Christian walk, I did the best that I could, and I came to different conclusions. Matthew may not be satisfied with the level to which I studied or pursued these things, and that's fine for him, but I did it more than a lot of people, I believe, and so this is where I've landed.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I graduated from a Judeo-Christian college studying the Oxford Annotated Bible with the Apocrypha because I'm so ignorant and uninformed. So it was a little disappointing to hear him say that. But, I mean, and of course the name The Informative Atheist, I mean, it's YouTube. It's a catchy name. I don't know everything about everything, so that's where that kind of comes from.
The problem is you know very little about the subjects you're claiming knowledge about, okay? You don't know about atheism. You don't know about theism, you don't know about Christianity, and you don't know about the Bible, and you don't know about religion. If you want to put that to the test, step up to the plate. I'll be happy to embarrass you on your lack of knowledge about those subjects.
So you can embarrass us maybe about the taxonomy, but
I can embarrass you about the taxonomy. I can embarrass you on the arguments. I can embarrass you on your lack of knowledge about the Bible, about Christianity, about what atheism is. about the arguments for atheism, about why they all fail, the stupid arguments put forward by atheists on Google Plus, why they're atheists, why that doesn't stand up to, and the alleged study you did about Christianity, which again is kindergarten level study.
Okay, Matt Bell, do you really?
Just because you did more than other people, doesn't mean you did sufficient. Okay, you can do more than other people, but still not do sufficient, and you did not do sufficient.
And again, I think your interpretation of sufficient is when you've come to the same conclusion that you have.
No, it's not. Listen. I know atheists who are far better informed than I am on atheism, on theism, on religion, and few and far between though on Christianity and the Bible. I have the greatest respect for them. Every time I try to discuss or debate with them, I get my ass handed to me on a plate. Okay? So your comment there is just demonstrably false. The difference is, though, I recognise that they have that because they demonstrate knowledge of those arguments and knowledge of those subjects. You two guys and most other atheists on Google Plus demonstrate the opposite. Ignorance of those subjects, ignorance of the arguments, ignorance of the topics under discussion, but pretend to knowledge. And that's what's so annoying and aggravating to informed individuals.
Matthew, I don't pretend to knowledge. I do think that I have reason and that I'm capable of assessing and evaluating arguments in a rational manner. I studied philosophy in college. I was an undergraduate and graduated with a degree in philosophy.
Oh, snap. Got it.
And what subject of philosophy?
It was an undergrad degree. It was just a general philosophy.
Right. Exactly. So it had fuck all to do with the subject under discussion, which is the philosophy.
No, it has everything to do with the ability to assess and evaluate arguments.
I mean, Matt, do you know everything?
No, I don't know everything. If I knew everything, I wouldn't have said 5 minutes ago that I know atheists who can kick my ass.
Because it sounds like you're...
Okay, let me... So first of all, I said we've got idiots like you two who are at kindergarten level.
Thanks.
Then I put myself in high school, and then I put other atheists in university level.
Okay, so go discuss with them.
Yeah, stop discussing with the uninformed people, please. Because we obviously don't know.
Well, because you idiots are the ones opening hangouts and pretending to knowledge you don't have.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine.
And it's good when it's alive opening a hangout. When you're challenged to defend your knowledge of these subjects, you run away from that challenge. You run as fast as you can.
We're right here, man.
And when so let's go into the arguments then. Stop messing about.
Again, this was a structured hangout that you have railroaded.
Yeah, we'll go into the arguments then. Let's see your knowledge. Let's see how thoroughly you studied the subjects. Let's find out what you know about the arguments.
Matthew.
It'll be next to nothing.
Matthew.
Compared to myself.
Are you finished?
No, not yet. Just starting. Why are you running away from defending your knowledge of these subjects?
Because I haven't claimed to have knowledge on the subject.
So what do you have?
To be able to, I have a skill set of reason and critical thinking.
Cool. So do I. So does everyone. Who cares?
No, not everyone has the skill set for critical thinking.
Yes, they do. Everyone's born, and we're all rational beings. We all
have the capacity to reason.
Absolute nonsense.
Have you watched any hangouts with Shani as me?
No, I haven't watched any hangouts. But Shani,
have you heard G-Man?
Yeah, I have, and you're on the same level to me as G-Man is to you.
Yes, we're all ants to you.
You can laugh. Well, again, I just pointed out, I know atheists, including individuals like Theodore Drange, who's a professor of religion, a retired professor of religion, an atheist, a well-known atheist, a published author, who is far above my level and who can kick my ass without breaking a sweat. So you can't all be ants to me if there's people whom I'm an ant to. You get that, don't you?
Matthew, could you do me a favor? Do me one favor, please. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Tomorrow, you and I can have a hangout, and whoever else wants to come on and have a discussion, and we will discuss the Leibnizian argument for the existence of God.
Give you time to watch a couple of internet videos.
No.
Yes.
Okay, here's my promise to you.
Do it now, you chicken shit.
Here's my promise to you.
Why are you so scared? Why are you running? Why are you running?
You're sabotaging my thing, and you're being a bully.
I'm sabotaging a hangout that was titled "General Discussion about Atheism, Theism."
And I've explained that was wrong.
And you want now that someone's joined you, a theist has actually joined your miserable hangout. What's happening is you now want to use your hangout on air, live on air hangout. You want to use that as a platform to preach your lies. And you expect people to say, oh yeah, okay, go ahead, I'll sit and listen to your bullshit.
Do you see this? This is notes of the things that I intended to talk about. The Leibnizian argument for the existence of God is not included on that list. And I am sorry if you were misinformed by the title of my thing.
Are you saying it's an accurate description of your hangout? What you're discussing now is an accurate description of the title of your hangout?
No, the title was wrong.
Exactly. So change the fucking title or change the subject to be relevant to the people who joined us.
As I explained. Yeah, no kidding. Do you think that you are exhibiting the characteristics that are supposed to be?
Yes. Read Matthew chapter 23. Oh, I'm sorry, you wouldn't know that. Or try Mark chapter 17.
How about Galatians?
Are you cherry picking here? Are you cherry picking?
How come when you cite verses?
No, I'm not, because what you do is Ecclesiastes says there is a time for everything. For everything there is a time. There's a time to break down, to pull down, to tear down, and there's a time to build up. So when we see Jesus in Matthew chapter 3 tearing down, that's not him going against Galatians, that's him acting appropriately in that situation. And when you see him with the women of Samaria building up, that's all consistent with a contextual understanding of the Bible that you are ignorant about.
What is the context when Jesus is tearing people down?
The context is he's speaking to people who are pretenders to knowledge.
To who?
The Pharisees and the Sadducees.
Okay, were they believers or were they non-believers?
They were theists, but they were theists. They were individuals. They were individuals who believed themselves to have more knowledge than what they actually possessed, and they were hypocrites as well.
Are there any examples in the Bible where Jesus is rude or condescending to anyone who is not a believer?
Everyone was a believer in the Bible, you dumb fuck. Do you think there was atheists hanging about in first century Judaism? Do you think there was non-believers there for Jesus to say, hey, let's have a debate, atheism versus theism? This is what I mean about your lack of knowledge about the subject. People were theists. Jesus came to a culture which was theistic. They believed in God.
Okay. So were the people that Jesus was rude to, why was he rude to them and not to, like, let's say the people
because they were pretending to knowledge they did not.
Was it because they were pretending, or were they because they were being jerks to other people, basically?
Read Matthew chapter 23.
I've read it.
It says, well, what does it say then? Tell me what it says.
I don't know it off the top of my head.
Right, so you've read it, but you don't remember it, but you know what it says.
Give me context.
What about the context? Is that the discussion Jesus has, they challenge Jesus, and he says, ye blind people, you whitewashed sepulchres.
Right. They were challenging Jesus. I'm not here challenging Jesus. That wasn't the discussion.
You're challenging a representative of Jesus. Same thing.
No.
Yes.
I wasn't even challenging a representative of Jesus. I was answering a question of another atheist who was challenging the sincerity of a believer. And
and you're not in a position to give an informed view on that subject.
My discussion and conclusion that I was trying to come to was that the believer was being sincere. So I was in defense of the believer.
Sincerity,
and you came on here to bully me and jerk me around and try and say that I'm ignorant.
You are ignorant about the subject matters under discussion. And sincerity, someone who comes from atheism to Christianity, they were an ignorant atheist by and large. So all these people coming, they've never ever studied there. Yeah, and but the same applies to Christians who go to atheism. They're
except for the
ignorant.
people that you cited earlier, who you think are more knowledgeable than you are.
Yeah, and what do they have in common? What do those people who have done that all have in common? They're all philosophically informed individuals. So
no one else, aside from these scholars and academic people...
Philosophically informed does not make you a scholar. Philosophically informed means informed about the subject matters, the philosophical subject matter of religion, theism, atheism, logic, and how philosophy generally works. Anyone in that position, I have respect for. They've came to an informed decision. Those who haven't,
I appreciate that, and Matthew, with this, I'm welcoming you back to have the discussion that you want to have tomorrow. But for tonight, I think I'm done with you, and I'm going to go ahead and boot you. And I don't normally boot people.
That's what I expect from free-thinking atheists, free-thinking, tolerant atheists.
Free-thinking people who actually want to have a structured discussion.
Yeah. So a structured discussion with which theist here? So you're going to have 1, 2, 3. You're going to have 4 atheists, and you're going to have 4 atheists having a discussion amongst each other about Christianity and theism, and no theist representative there to say, hey, no, wait a minute, you got that wrong. What about this? What about that? That's the kind of cowardly hangout people like you thrive on.
Okay.
You cannot,
Thank you, Matthew.
You cannot be challenged on your ignorance and lack of...
Hey, oh my gosh. What is wrong with him?
I don't like to do that. But there comes a point when it's just ridiculous, and he was not letting anyone else have any word in Edgewise. Welcome, Floyd.
Yeah. You gotta get it right. You gotta get it right. You gotta get it right. I'm like, dude, we're just having a discussion.
And Nadia, hello to you as well.
Oh, gosh.
I rage quitted. Matt Bell's hangout last week because he infuriated me so much.
Well, you know, it's one thing to have a discussion and to challenge people and to say, look, you don't know X, Y, and Z. But he wasn't even saying all he's after is to say you don't know the taxonomy that I know. Well, great, you know taxonomy. That doesn't make you right.
Yeah, he's constantly saying so and so is not qualified. Your sources aren't qualified. You're not qualified.
Yeah, it's ad hominem is all that is.
Yeah.
Ironically, he makes fun of G-Man, but he sounds exactly like G-Man. When I was arguing with him, well, everything you're saying is out of ignorance. Well, no, it's not, man. It's right there in the text. I mean, it kills me.
I wouldn't go so far to make that comparison.
Well, it's ridiculous. I mean, it wasn't a debate. It was just simply a discussion.
Yes.
He was trying to turn it into a debate, and I'm like, oh, by the way, everybody, I'm the uninformed atheist. By the way, no. I mean, it was. Oh my gosh, so infuriating.
Oh,
I graduated. Right. I studied this stuff. Goodness. I'm sorry, go on.
Anyhow, the next topic on my list was back to Matthew 4:19's actual video that Robin had cited in her video, and he asked the question, why should I be an atheist? And I tried to watch some of the hangout, and I think I've actually seen the hangout where they discussed that issue before, and I just wanted to make the note myself that I don't think that it's as important to be an atheist as it is to try and be a critical thinker and to be. I would rather identify myself as a rationalist than an atheist, because I think that's more important to try and weigh evidence and facts and things objectively and draw your conclusions out of the things that are true to the degree to which that we can determine what truth is. So that would be my answer to Matthew 4:19's question there. Did any of you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a conclusion rather than a starting point. You look at the evidence. You start with yourself, what we know about history and science and evidence, and go from there. Use logic and go from there. And most of us feel it's just not warranted to believe in theism. So until better reasons, better evidence, better arguments come forth, we simply don't accept the current evidence, reasons, and arguments that have been presented to us. We're not. If you find an argument convincing, it doesn't mean that you automatically take the opposite position. We just reject the position of those arguments.
There you go.
Well stated.
And if he at least professed a position contrary to what he believes in his heart, he'd essentially be lying. So the fact of the matter is, he himself probably should not be an atheist. On the other hand, maybe he should move on to like fideism or something like that, where instead of evidentialism.
Yeah. I think just being honest is important as far as what you believe and why you believe it is important as well. So, like, I think that's what you were getting at there, Nadia. That Matthew 4:19 clearly, I think, believes what he believes. He has that conviction. I don't, and I could, as much as I could try to say, well, okay, that I like, the idea of being religious or something like that, or having a relationship with a deity that loves me. All that's nice, but if I'm not feeling it and I don't genuinely believe it, what good does it do for me to try and fake it?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Definitely.
I think a relationship's a two-way conversation, not a one-way as well.
Right. Yeah, which is one of the reasons that my faith eroded and pretty much became non-existent, because I felt like I was giving, and I was in my evangelical upbringing and things. They discussed prayer and said, well, it should be two-way, and I would pray. And I would even wait, and we talked about meditation in the churches and Bible studies and things, and trying to listen to God, and I would read and get things out of the Bible that I attributed to God, but I never got anything that I could genuinely say wasn't, on an internal level or audible voice or anything like that. There was never anything that I've found that was, I could honestly say was an active voice from somewhere other besides my own mind and thoughts. So, and one of the things that I intended to point out was the fact that now, Matthew 4:19, from the time where he kind of started on YouTube, he didn't initially embrace the presuppositionalist arguments and things that he came to embrace later. And it's interesting that in this hangout and things, he claimed that he was an atheist before he was a believer, But now, months down the road, since he's embraced this presuppositionalist arguments and things, he now claims that there's no such thing as atheists, and that everyone. It would be interesting to hear his view. And so Matthew 4:19, if you ever come across this video and listening, I'm interested to hear in what it is that how you explain that, or deal with that fact that you at one point claimed that you were an atheist and didn't believe in God, and now you claim that there's no such thing. Were you mistaken when you thought that initially, or how do you explain that?
That's interesting. He was once an atheist, no longer believes in atheists now that he is a theist. That's interesting. Oh goodness, what would there be theists without atheists? That's the big question, man. I just posted like an 8-second video of that. I'm like, that's it. I mean, I don't even know what else to say about that, just because, the whole burden of proof thing gets to me, man. And so it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, the whole idea that, well, and then the idea that you couldn't be a former Christian either. I know. I mean, it sounds like you had similar experience to what I had. I mean, I chose to go to a Christian college because I wanted to pursue, God and learn about the Bible and be in a Christian environment. I embraced that culture and that idea. And that was one of the first decisions that I made as a young adult.
Oh, yeah.
And when I got married, I took my wife and kids to church. I tried to study the Bible with my wife and brought my children up in the church. But
oh wow, I'll say ironically though, I did go to the whole Christian school thing. I found atheism like my last year of college, and I'm like, oh no. So I'm like, may as well finish these 12 hours and just graduate and get out of here. And so I'm just like, no. And it's just, I retook a religion course too. That's where I found it. I'm like, oh, let me actually read through this and then get the better grade. And I'm like, oh, what I'm reading isn't really matching up with what's going on here. So that's, in a sense, yeah, you can read the Bible and become an atheist. Yes, these things happen.
Oh, yes, man. Similar experience.
I hear you, man.
I made it a lot longer than you did, though. I think because I was somewhere in the neighborhood of 34 or 35 years old before I really had came to a point where I didn't believe anymore and couldn't even pretend to go on. So
I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, but I fought it tooth and nail. I mean, it was not something that I was interested in pursuing, but I wanted to know the truth, and that's where I landed. So
there you go.
So and then Christian Polymath, or no, it's Genius Polymath is what his actual handle is. He asked the question, why is it that I do not believe in the Bible? We had a discussion and had some back and forth and things in one of the video chats or a post, I think it was, and he started just dumping scripture, and I said, well, yeah, I understand, and I used to believe those things, but I don't anymore. And his response was, well, why don't you believe the Bible anymore? And so my answer is there are a lot of reasons, but in short, to kind of sum up, I found that the Old Testament was not, the God there was not just. The Old Testament law is horrible. Many of the decisions and punishments that are handed out by the leadership that God supposedly put in charge was bad and completely horrific. Stoning people for picking up sticks on the Sabbath day. I could go on and on and on, but that's one category, and then the other category of why I don't believe in the Bible is, the New Testament has justice issues when it comes to eternal damnation. There are a lot of inconsistencies and problems with the text itself when you go through the Gospels and things, and then just the claims that are made in the Bible didn't pan out when I sincerely believed them and had faith and was trying to employ that faith. I just didn't see the results that were promised in the Bible. So does anyone else want to take a shot at that? Or I don't know if Floyd, if you were a believer at one time or not, and Nadia, I don't think you were. So your response to why you don't believe the Bible would be different. But Floyd, why don't you go first if you have any thoughts on that issue?
I'm sorry, I just came back. The issue of what we thought of the Bible when we tried to believe, or
essentially, if you did believe the Bible at one time, why you reject it, or if you were never a believer, why is it that you don't find the Bible's claims compelling right now?
Yeah, I was raised mainline Presbyterian, which is a fairly liberal form of Protestant Christianity, and at a very early age, I just had doubts over the whole concept. In Sunday school, we learned about Adam and Eve and Noah's Ark and so forth, and for me, it just sounded no different than all the other kids' stories that I was told, and I was thinking, if this stuff's true, why are we only learning it on Sunday morning? Why aren't we learning this in elementary school the next day? The whole thing seemed very odd to me. And then, why are there other religions? Why doesn't everyone agree with what I'm being told that I have to believe? The whole thing just sounds fishy. And then as I got older and started studying the Bible and reading critical scholarship and things like that, all my suspicions were justified in how I felt about the Bible. This something just doesn't sound right here. It doesn't correspond to what I think reality is, and I see contradictions. I see cruelty. Now this seems to be making sense. And then when I started to dig into it more, and sure enough, all my skepticism was backed by scholarship. So.
Yeah, to me, once you kind of let go of trying to make it fit and trying to make it make sense, and you just apply the idea that it seems more likely that this was just the outcome of men writing things down and trying to do the best that they could, or in some cases maybe they were trying to take advantage of the power that it gave them, having authority given to them by a deity or something like that. Man, the Bible makes so much more sense in that context than it does when you try and assume that an all-powerful, all-knowing, completely just God handed down this law, and trying to make sense of it that way. It just, man, night and day the difference. And to me, it was a relief when I just kind of let that go and said, boy, it all just makes so much more sense this way. Nadia, how about you? What are your thoughts? Or is there anything in the Bible that you ever did find compelling?
Well, to the extent I find it compelling, it's not as truth stories like that. I mean, it's, you find like Aesop's fables or Beowulf or whatever compelling as I don't know, epic literature or something, and you don't really take the Iliad as some accurate account of history, reality, or anything. In the meantime, far as like the way I arrived at the decision, it's difficult to piece together because it actually proceeds like when I had reliable memory. It's that young. So I know that I was familiar with a number of mythologies. I remember, I guess I was familiar with some wide variety of dinosaurs, birds, insects, and so I mean there's ideas that you might have known a bit about nature, a bit about other religions, and so on. Yeah, I think the other religion thing might have been more prominent because, really the whole way I've always kind of approached it is, like mythology or whatever, like Aristophanes in Symposium, tells the quote-unquote creation myth of humans being created, basically double-bodied or whatever, two bodies glued together, split in half and search for the other half. And that's, nobody takes it seriously as a account of human creation, but or humans' origins or anything. But it illustrates the idea of a soulmate, right? So same way for original sin, universal moral imperfection. I guess you have various sacrifice or scapegoating. You have Binding of Isaac, Jesus, and the usual stories of like betrayal, deny 3 times, betray with a kiss, and so on. And they're great, leitmotifs and themes and all that, but they don't add up to any kind of like accurate rendition of reality or grand truth or anything.
Right. Yeah, and I can see definitely coming from your perspective, where you had probably more exposure than I did to some of these other, and then getting exposed to the Christian Bible to say, well, why should I give this any more credibility than any of these others? That makes a lot of sense to me. Informative atheist, do you want to take a crack at it? Were there any kind of big things that made the Bible just appear absurd to you, or the reasons that you reject it?
Well, the contradictions, just the epic claims that it was making, basically, among other things, knowing that there were different types of religions, different types of other belief systems, and why is this one the only one that seems sound? And I mean, it just, a lot of it just, it didn't make sense to me. It just makes sense to me, in a sense. It's a great epic book, and great literature to read, but nothing to be, to take literally at all. I didn't, like, when I first started doing this, as I remember Matthew Bell talked about a lot of ignorance. I didn't even know, like, creationism was a thing. Like, I mean, I was that ignorant of the subject when I first started doing this. I'm like, but don't they keep church and school and school, and apparently these things existed, and I was like, oh shit. So yeah, I was like, well, so it was just something that shouldn't be taken literally. That's just my thing.
It's funny, a lot of it is not even very well written at all. I mean, there are big problems with just even the flow and the contradictions even within the same narratives and things like that, or within the same chapters and books and things. Just it's there are parts of it that are have literary value and things like that, definitely. And I think a lot of the kind of allusions and things, and there are a lot of throwbacks in the New Testament to casting back to the Old Testament that make it interesting and worth studying and reading and looking into. And I think there are valuable moral ideas contained in the Bible too. I think the golden rule is probably.
But it's not just the Bible.
Right? What's that?
Literary value is not just the Bible in itself. I mean, how do you read Dante or Milton without knowing the Bible?
Right. Yeah. True. Very true. Excellent point. Yeah, and I would definitely advise for that reason that everybody have some literacy with the Bible and that text. It's definitely got a lot of cultural significance around the world. So. Well, that was the last thing on my list, and then I added the Leibnizian argument, but I'm about played out for tonight on that. But I will try and have another hangout tomorrow night, and we can do Matthew Bell can have a free for all on exposing my ignorance if he likes. And I promise Matthew that I will not be doing any additional study. I don't have time for that. I've got stuff I'm doing tonight aside from this, and work tomorrow on top of that. So I'm not interested in trying to make myself look better than I am.
There you go.
You can shame me all you want.
At one point you mentioned, why should you give it any more weight than the others? And I wouldn't say I was entirely that dismissive. It's kind of like the whole point of it is not to compete or whatever. I mean, we're telling stories of the Jews or whatever, and I guess the Hellenized Jews and the Levant or whatever back in the first century, and it's not. And it's doing it with this whole style of the whole moral lesson, whatever, mythologized, and it's taken seriously, but not as not as a literal account, not as a again with the creation myth from the Symposium. Even the idea of a soulmate, right, is not even that universal a truth, but the illustration of it, at least for those to whom it applies, is still meaningful. So, in that way, I considered it still to have its own sort of weight and whatever, and wasn't that great at extracting those meanings, but
sure. Well, you're evaluating each claim and each text on its own merit and things, and that's I think that's kind of what you're getting at. Is that?
No, I mean the idea that it's making a claim is a little bit of an overreach, right? I mean, the point of view of something like this, it's very much non-literal. It's very much, whatever the overt claim might be. It's making a point that is beyond kind of like the literal statement, and there's quote unquote truth in it, which like I said before, the soulmate idea, doesn't apply quite as broadly or whatever as sort of a next layer of non-literalness would make it sound, but it's still something, but I think people take it the wrong direction.
I'm not sure I'm tracking with you there.
Okay, well, I mean, for instance, when Alexander invaded Egypt or whatever, and they were making up gods out of whole cloth. Zeus, Ammon, Serapis, Harpocrates, and so on.
Okay.
And their whole stories or ideas and so on were meant to illustrate almost a nationalist idea. That the Greek and the Egyptian culture were, somehow uniting and becoming aligned, and these deities were just grand, statement of it. And the Serapis has some ideas about wealth, and Arglocrates was, what was it? I guess the baby Horus was a statue's made of it. It had it's acting out the hieroglyphs for a baby. I was putting a lip to its or finger to its lips. And back to Greece back then, that meant shh, be quiet. So it's the god of secrecy and silence. And they built up the whole thing just around that misinterpretation. But it was still some kind of illustrated story, like all the myths were, right? So at that point, even though it's wrong on like 5 different levels, there's still some kind of truth to it, right?
Okay, I can track with you there. I think I understand.
Yeah, it's like very metaphorical, right?
Sure.
I think Seneca said it best. He said, "Religion is regarded by the common people as true, by the wise as false, and by rulers as useful."
Oh, I like that.
I think that's very true. I've got to wrap things up here. I'll leave this open for you guys if you want to continue the conversation, but I've got to get going. So have a good night, everyone. We'll see you next time.
All right, man. It's been good.
Good night.
Good night.